Right. Hi, Jeff and Lizzie. This is just a wee couple of slides that might help put everything into, well, give you some ideas about this thing I've been talking about for a while, outdoor learning technology, and particularly how you might integrate technology into outdoor learning. So a couple of slides here, we'll talk about different concepts and maybe some models that you could use. The trick is perhaps to see that you could be informed by any of these models. You don't have to follow each one religiously. I mean, they just get you thinking about how you might choose to do it. That's probably the best sort of suggestion for how to use them, but you'll work it out yourselves. You'll know what's best for yourself. So I'll just go through the slides and we can talk about it when I chat with you next week. So the why, we've talked about this before, but essentially the why technology has to be part or could be part of learning is that it prepares learners for the future, especially this idea that they need to be digitally fluent, and especially that they don't need to just be consumers of technology, but they need to be able to be creative with it and to perhaps make new meaning or new knowledge from it. And the key thing is that technology should be perhaps encouraged to be used in these ways, not just as ways to consume more media and technology. Outdoor learning and technology, oopsie-daisy, is not all good, obviously. We've talked about this before. It can interfere with authentic experiences outdoors. That's what some researchers think. It can be a distraction, and it doesn't necessarily encourage collaboration. Excuse me. A lot of technology consumption is a personal thing, such as all the social media apps. Yeah, they do involve connection with other people, but not genuine collaboration, perhaps. Yet saying that, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary learning opportunities are really possible. That's where it's very rich. And researchers and educators have looked at technology learning outdoors. They've seen that place is key. And interestingly, this is a screen grab from the TKI site here in New Zealand, talking about enabling e-learning beyond the classroom. And I believe that's a child doing a bow drill in a school ground. So there you go, amazing connections there. So what I'm going to suggest here, right, is there's three concepts. These might be useful to you. And I'll just talk about each one briefly. We can chat about more of these when we get face-to-face. The first one is called SAMR, and it's a 4-stage model, starting off with S for substitution, A for augmentation, M for modification, and R for redefinition. The basic principle is that how we use or integrate technology in education could be categorized in one of these domains. And what we're trying to do is work in the right-hand side, the redefinition side, not just the substitution side. Classic example of substitution is that you just get children to look something up on the internet instead of looking up something in a book. So you're substituting the internet for the book. Augmentation, you might ask them to write write it on a shared Google document, what they found out. So it's a slight increase in sort of richness in terms of the technology use. Modification might mean you redesign the task a little bit more. So it could be that you, if you're doing research, that you maybe you could co-research with students from another part of New Zealand, doing something online, whether that's through Zoom or Skype, or whether that's through collaborative writing document again, but across a lot of miles, across countries even. The redefinition is around completely thinking about new tasks that weren't previously possible. So jumping around in examples, an example of redefinition is getting learners to video their experiences outdoors and sharing that with other people and creating something with that video. It's a completely new task, not conceived of before the technology had been introduced. You couldn't do that videoing really in any other way. It's difficult to work in the R all the time, as you can probably imagine, but it's where you're trying to get you thinking. That's the idea of this model. As a teacher or educator, you should be trying to think about what redefinition of these tasks happens when I apply technology or try to use technology. So that's that one. And the T3 model is quite similar, but it's got a slight more emphasis on kind of social action. But anyway, it's similar in the sense that it's 3 stages. The translational stages at the beginning are essentially similar to SAMR. They're about using technology just automatically and in a consumption way. So getting the children to, again, investigate something online, search, Google, what can you find out? Transformational aspect of it is more about learners working with ways of producing digital outputs or contributing to some collaborative productive digital outputs, which could be sort of sharing videos and making videos, sort of skill-based stuff. But then the third one almost takes a more sort of socially just twist to the redefinition sort of ideas that SAMR talks about. So again, this T3 transcendent stage is meant to be much more rich, much more interdisciplinary, much more a purposeful activity. Inquiry design and social entrepreneurship are essentially getting learners to tackle big world, real world problems or wicked problems like climate change through technology and through innovative and sort of interesting, rich uses of technology to do that. So I think I've seen examples online of learners connecting with communities across the world that are suffering from climate change, to rising sea levels or through extreme temperatures, investigating these problems. So student-led, investigating these problems, recording these problems and sharing them with technology. So that could be making videos again, it could be creating blogs, it could be, engaging in social action on Twitter. That's a difficult thing to do with learners, but it's in that space. So from SAMR and from T3, hopefully what you can see is this progression towards more interdisciplinary, more complexity, tackling real world problems, sort of not using technology as a consumption tool, but using it to create knowledge, and that the learners are driving this. Are the technologies being introduced in a way where the learners can use it and run with it? It's not really teacher-led so much. It's probably teacher-supported or teacher-conceived. So those two models tend to follow the same sort of process, that you start with easy, or you try to avoid just replacing technology, using technology as replacement, and going more complex. The third one is the kind of one, and I'm going to show my hand here a little bit, it's not just me that's trying to talk about this, but the third one is a kind of more organic place-led approach that I'm advocating. And it's not just me, there's a lot of researchers in educational technology and, well, yeah, so this thing called posthumanism, but they're talking about how technology can encourage us to do things that maybe we haven't thought about before. So I'll just talk about this and maybe it makes more sense. So place-responsive approach is assembling and attunement would be some of the forces at work that we're trying to use here. So the process here is that we're taking a deliberate approach to using technology outdoors, which hasn't been done before very much. And the place where this education happens isn't just a backdrop, it has a way of pushing back on what we do outdoors. And you guys know about this already because you do all this loads of time. So a place-responsive approach is saying we're required to respond to places as we're thinking about using them in outdoor learning. So the places push back on the ideas we have for planning learning and for doing learning outdoors. But crucially, if we think of it as an assembling process, then what you've got is essentially all the things we find outdoors, like mud, humans, plants, technology, are ingredients for technology and outdoor learning. So they can all be assembled. There is a bit of a tendency in technology integration in classrooms to see the technology as perhaps the driver. But what I'm suggesting is that the place is the driver, and that we select technology or ways of using technology that we think will fit depending on where we're using it. Now, attunement is key. So attunement is a response-making process with the material, and something that I'm calling the more than human and the effective features of place. So the more than human is just a term to try and not see humans as more important than animals and plants. It's a sort of a breaking down of the hierarchy of that. So when we're attuned as educators, we're able to respond in places to what we see there in terms of the material, mud, sticks, leaves, the more than human, and the bits of place that make us feel strong emotions. Again, this is bread and butter for what you do. What would be fascinating to understand is how you would perhaps try to interweave technology into this. And then the third bit is to say that mobile devices like smartphones can encourage learners to make and sustain relations with this more than human, with all the living things that might not otherwise be possible. So what we're saying here in this approach is that essentially all the things we find outdoors can impinge on our learning, and they can drive what technology we use, where we use it, and how we use it, more so than having a predetermined schema called SAMR T3, where we apply it to the situation. So this one's much more place-led. That's the idea. And it's not just me, it's coming out in the writing and technology use outdoors. I think any educational technologists are seeing that when you do take technology outdoors, you have to take care of place. That's quite well documented. So this is a kind of a new approach that's coming out from the field. And I think it might be an interesting one to compare with the other two more linear sort of approaches. All right, so we'll chat about more of them when I see you face to face, but just a quick couple of slides on video making as educational practice. Because definitely video making is something we talked about, and I think it could be a really good entry point into some of this for you. And also just useful for you and the learners. Video making can be useful to gather evidence of learners learning and of others learning. Again, I know we've talked about this. This might fit in with what you've already thought about. It can be used for narrating a perspective, whether it's visual or audio, like a video diary. Tool-wise, it developed digital fluency because learners are creating content, they're creating knowledge with these items. It's not just consumption. And it could be showcasing knowledge, a bit like what I've said at the beginning here. So they use a video to showcase knowledge that others have learned or they've learned. So there's a real creative dimension to video making. It's very open. And then some top tips for video making with learners. Shooting in landscape is a good idea. And I'm suggesting here that video making is done with smartphones or old smartphones. I've got a couple that I'll bring. They're just ancient, but they just need to be able to be turned on and use the video. You don't have to have any Wi-Fi capability or any, we do actually deal with the videos and just store them. You don't need any SIM cards in them, obviously. So you would shoot in landscape, hold the phone on its side. Think about the audio in really windy or noisy situations. You might just capture good images and then not play the audio when you're showing them to people. You can maybe overlay sort of content or overlay subtitles. Videos create big files to store and to share. So you would shoot really short videos. I'm talking about the learners here, shooting short videos. We encourage them to shoot maximum 30 seconds to a minute, probably even in the 10 to 15 second category could be absolutely fine. It's much easier to shoot short videos once to get them right than to try and edit them. Video editing is horrific. It's just an absolute nightmare. So it's much better to just reshoot the videos. If your learners wanting to show something to somebody by a video and they want to make a video of it, just get them to shoot it a couple of times until they're happy with it. And that itself is education, isn't it? And also short video files have got much smaller footprint. They're much smaller amount of megabytes. And if you're trying to share files, especially to parents and to family members, large video files are just a nightmare to try and share. But if they're short, you can get them onto social media quite easily. Cool. So that's just some ideas that maybe gets going. And then a last point about browser-based tools, you can do a lot of editing, videoing, or handling videos on browser-based tools if you want. They're just tools that open up in a window when you click on it, like a Google window, rather than download them and buy them and all that sort of stuff. We can chat about this. It's just a way of keeping things free and really easy. You don't want to go down the route of having to get super technical here, otherwise it just loses its interest. That's the point. And then a closing thought whilst useful responses to climate change will need to involve humans, imagining solutions from a purely human perspective may not be enough. So this is just getting us to think about this purpose, perhaps, towards climate change education and all of this, or environmental sort of dimensions to it. And trying to see how we use technology and the more than human is an interesting way forward. Just a closing thought. Cool. Okay. Well, I'll stop that there. That's probably about 15 minutes, and I'll chat to you guys on Tuesday.